Good afternoon, colleagues. This is meeting number 122 of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts for Monday, December 3rd, 2018. We're here today in consideration of Report 3, Canada's Fighter Force National Defence of the 2018 Fall Report of the Auditor General of Canada. I would just remind committee and those in our audience today that we are televised, and so I would encourage you all to put your phones on silent or vibrate and less distractions. We're honoured to have with us from the Office of the Auditor General, Mr. Jerome Berthollet, Assistant Auditor General of Canada, and Ms. Casey Thomas, Principal. And from the Department of National Defence, pleased to have Deputy Minister Jody Thomas, Ms. Jody Thomas, as well as Patrick Flynn, Assistant Deputy Minister, Materiel, and Lieutenant General A.D. Meinzinger, Commander, Royal Canadian Air Force. So we thank you for your attendance here today. We look forward to your testimony, and we will now turn the time over to Mr. Berthollet.
Monsieur le Président, je vous remercie.
Chair, thank you for this opportunity to present the results of our report on Canada's Fighter Force. Joining me at the table is Ms. Casey Thomas, the principal responsible for the audit. Our audit focused on whether national defence managed risks to Canada's fighter force so that it could meet Canada's commitments to NORAD and NATO until a replacement fleet is operational.
The Government of Canada directed National Defence to have enough fighter aircraft available every day to meet the highest NORAD alert level and Canada's NATO commitment at the same time. This meant that National Defence had to increase by 23% the number of fighter aircraft available for operations. This new requirement came at a time when the Royal Canadian Air Force faced a growing shortage of trained and experienced pilots and technicians. Even before the new operational requirement, the fighter force did not have enough experienced technicians and pilots. According to National Defence, as of April 2018, 22% of technician positions in CF-18 squadrons were vacant or were filled by technicians not yet fully qualified to do maintenance. Furthermore, National Defence identified that it had only 64% of the trained CF-18 pilots it needed to meet the government's new requirement.
While there was a plan to increase the number of technicians, we found that there was no plan to increase the number of CF-18 pilots. Pilots have been leaving the fighter force faster than new ones could be trained. As a result, given the shortage of pilots and the limits of its training system, National Defence will not be able to meet the new operational requirement for many years. Even though National Defence's analysis showed that it needed additional technicians and pilots, the government focused on increasing the number of aircraft as the solution to meet the new requirement. It first planned to buy 18 new Super Hornets. However, because of a trade dispute, the government decided not to pursue this purchase. The government is now planning to buy used fighter jets from Australia as an interim solution to bridge the gap to 2032, which is the current target date for completing the transition to a replacement fleet. However, even if National Defence can address its personnel shortage, the Australian jets are the same age and have the same operational limitations as Canada's current fleet of CF-18s. Furthermore, we found that the combat capability of the CF-18 has not been kept up to date. This is partly due to the advancing technology of modern fighter aircraft and a lack of investment to upgrade the CF-18's combat systems. Without upgrades to its combat systems, the CF-18 will be increasingly less effective while deployed on NORAD and NATO operations. In our opinion, flying the CF-18 until 2032 without a plan to upgrade combat capability will result in less important roles for the fighter force. Moreover, it will also pose a risk to Canada's ability to contribute to NORAD and NATO operations.
And almost $3 billion to extend the life of its current fleet and to buy, operate, and maintain the interim aircraft. However, without a plan to deal with its biggest obstacles, a shortage of experienced pilots and the CF-18's declining combat capability, these spending decisions will not be enough to meet Canada's commitments. Until national defence knows how and when it will solve pilot shortages and get better combat capability, more aircraft won't solve its problems. National Defence has agreed with our 2 recommendations and has developed an action plan. Mr. Chair, this concludes my opening remarks. We will be pleased to answer any questions the committee may have. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bertolette. We'll now turn to Ms. Thomas, please, for your statement.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm pleased to be here before you today to discuss the Auditor General's findings on Canada's fighter force. The Canadian Armed Forces fighter capability is critical to defending Canadian sovereignty, enabling continental security, and contributing to international peace and stability. Nous prenons ces obligations très.
We take these obligations very seriously. I would like to thank Mr. Ferguson and his team for their insight and recommendations. I'd also like to thank you for the time you're dedicating to this matter. I will keep my remarks to the point so that we can have time to answer as many questions as possible.
Important concerns about the combat capability of the CF-18s and the availability of experienced personnel to fly and maintain them. Before I speak to how we are addressing these challenges, I would like to clarify one point. The 2032 timeline is being reported quite extensively, but to be clear, the Royal Canadian Air Force will receive the new jets between 2025 and 2032. The first advanced fighter will arrive in 2025, and the number of mission-ready aircraft will increase quickly to address our NORAD and NATO commitments. In fact, we expect to achieve initial operating capability by 2026 with 9 advanced fighters ready to fulfill the NORAD mission. We are committed to keeping the procurement process for the advanced fighter fleet on time and on budget. And by 2032, we will have the right quantity and quality of aircraft needed for the Royal Canadian Air Force to meet our NORAD and NATO obligations for years to come. This also means that while we will continue to fly the CF-18s until 2032, we will not be flying all of the CF-18s until 2032. We will only fly as many as we need to support the transition to the advanced fighter fleet. We recognize that there will be challenges as we prepare for this transition, and we are working very hard to implement the Auditor General's recommendations, which will help us mitigate these challenges. We are managing the life of the CF-18s with the purchase of 18 interim fighters from Australia to meet a retirement date of 2032. And we are furthering recruitment and training and retention initiatives to make sure the RCAF has the right people with the right experience to fly and maintain the aircraft. Each of these activities is vital, and it should be noted that they are happening concurrently. We have to simultaneously support the interim fleet now and prepare for the advanced fleet of the future. And we have plans in place to upgrade the CF-18s so they continue to meet regulatory requirements, and so that the Canadian Armed Forces can continue to operate seamlessly with our allies both at home and abroad. We expect to start implementing these upgrades into the CF-18 fleet as early as 2020. And as per the Auditor General's recommendation, the Royal Canadian Air Force is assessing additional options that will allow us to quickly enhance the combat capability of the CF-18s that will fly until 2032.
We expect this analysis to be done by spring 2019. The purchase of 18 interim fighters and spare parts will spread the number of flying hours across more aircraft to extend their lifespan and increase operational flexibility, to provide an effective fighter capability. We must have enough experienced pilots and maintenance technicians to fly and maintain the fleet.
Improve and refine its recruiting strategies. We are exploring a variety of innovative new methods to allow the Canadian Armed Forces to attract new personnel with the skills and aptitudes we need. And we continue to recruit maintenance technicians and pilots. We are making sure that the training and experience they receive will prepare them to fly and maintain the advanced fighters in 2025. And we must also retain our experienced personnel to fly and maintain the CF-18 fleet between now and then. This has been a significant challenge in select areas in recent years, and we're putting significant effort into improving our retention strategies. In addition to CAF initiatives such as Seamless Canada and the CAF retention strategy, the Royal Canadian Air Force has introduced several initiatives to improve retention, and more are in development. At their core, these retention initiatives are about improving life for Air Force personnel and their families at the squadron and unit levels. They are intended to address some of the main reasons why pilots and technicians are leaving the Air Force. As an example, the Family Sponsor Program is helping families settle into new postings more easily. Sponsor families become an immediate support network for new arrivals to the squadron and help them connect to the larger community, both on and off the base. Lieutenant General Meisinger would be happy to expand on this initiative and the others his team are developing. These initiatives reflect our commitment to our people. And part of that commitment is making sure they have the tools and trainings to do the job we ask of them. To close, Mr. Chair, I want to state one thing quite clearly. The only enduring solution that will allow us to simultaneously meet all of our commitments involves both the procurement of 88 advanced fighters and having enough pilots and technicians to get the mission ready. This process is underway and progressing well, but it will take time. The next major milestone will be the release of a finalized request for proposal to qualified suppliers in the spring of 2019. And while we continue to develop the future fighter fleet, we are acting on the Auditor General's recommendations to upgrade the CF-18s and increase the number of skilled and experienced technicians and pilots in the fighter force. I look forward to discussing this more in depth with you, and I welcome any questions you have at this time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Thomas. We'll now move into our first round of questioning. It's a 7-minute round, and the first question goes to Ms. Mendez, please.
Very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for being here today. Mr. Berthollet, if I may, I'd like to start by trying to, on the record, state that as far as I understood the report, and maybe Ms. Thomas will be able to elaborate on this, the question of capability gap that has been subject to so much questioning is not a question of invention of the Liberal government. It was a capability gap in terms of the obligations we had to NORAD, or we have to NORAD and NATO, if we are to provide the maximum and the best of our capability to meet our obligations. Am I correct in this?
Thank you very much. So in 2016, the requirements changed. Prior to 2016, National Defence was risk managing its commitments between NORAD and NATO. So
I understand that. So it was risk managing. It wasn't necessarily meeting the highest alerts or the highest requests. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And in 2016, when the commitments changed, there was a new requirement to meet the highest level of NORAD and NATO commitments at the same time. And so that was the change that came into place.
Which justified the idea that we needed more aircraft and that we needed different kinds of aircraft? Is that how Defense, the department justified it?
The work that we did demonstrated that what was needed were more technicians and more pilots. And so that was the work that National Defence had prepared, and that's what we found.
For the current fleet?
For the CF-18 fleet?
Yeah, exactly, for the current fleet,
yes.
Exactly, but not for the new fighter.
We didn't look at the requirements in terms of technicians and pilots for the new fighter.
Okay, so that hasn't been part of strictly for the CF-18 that you've done your audit?
We were looking at whether or not national defense could meet its commitments to NORAD and NATO currently until a replacement fleet comes into place.
Okay, so now we go to Madam Deputy Minister, if I may. And it has been a constant through the audit that you, not you personally, but that the department is facing this obvious shortage of pilots and technicians and mechanics that are capable of meeting these higher expectations from the force. So what really are these plans that you have to meet those requirements? Because that is quite worrisome. You don't train a pilot in 6 months, and I think we would like to hear a little more in detail what are exactly your plans to fulfill this very obvious and urgent requirement.
Thank you very much for the question. I'm going to ask the Commander of the Air Force to elaborate on specific plans. I would like to frame the answer by talking about the worldwide shortage of pilots. There's a demographic change going on, and there is a demand for pilots in the public sector, in armed forces, and in the private sector around the world, and we are experiencing a shortage of pilots. And since 2016, when this demographic change really began to take effect, we've lost more pilots than normal. There's always a normal attrition to industry, to other things, but there's been a significant change in that attrition over the last 2 years. So we are doing a number of things as a result of Strong, Secure and Engaged to improve life for families so that we make it easier to stay in the forces. We ask a lot of our families, we ask a lot of our military members, and so our retention strategies include a number of things for families to make life on the base better incentives to move, better remuneration. And then, in addition, there are recruitment and retention strategies for the Air Force itself, which I'll ask General Meisinger to respond to.
Yeah, thanks, ma'am. Just, if I may, just to reinforce the comment with respect to the macroeconomic reality before I get to some of our initiatives. The most recent labor force report out of Canada in March indicated the demand for additional pilots just in Canada alone at 7,300. And if you look at the global estimates, we see commercial travel doubling over the next 2 years. So there's a fairly significant macroeconomic pressure at play, and we acknowledge that, and it puts more urgency behind some of the work that we wish to do. Many angles to answer your question. We are tackling this in multiple ways. I look at the great work that's underway under General Chuck Lamar, the Chief of Military Personnel. As the Deputy Minister has indicated, under Strong, Secure and Engaged, there's a whole host of personnel issues. Seamless Canada is a bespoke initiative underway currently, which really gets at supporting our families. As we move families from province to province, often they have to be exposed to atypical and dissimilar transitions where they may have to get their vehicles re-inspected even though they had their vehicle inspected 6 months previously. Spousal occupations are not accredited in provinces. So there's a huge effort to try to normalize the expectations and the transition requirements from province to province. So I have a lot of hope in that. As we look at the reasons why people leave the Canadian Armed Forces, it very much drives our thinking as to what we need to do. And certainly the feedback from those that are releasing, it's a question of family, challenges for their family. There's a dimension of ops tempo, work-life balance, predictability in terms of geographical location, and then typically fifth or sixth are comments about financial remuneration. So what are we doing about it? There's a number of prongs of attack. Certainly we're looking at the reserve force. So fighter pilots that have left and that will continue to leave, undoubtedly moving forward, are given a customized reserve service offer, meaning that we will offer them the ability to continue to work with us on a 2 to 5 to 10 day per month window to encourage them to stay and continue to contribute to our mission. And we will support that through temporary duty travel and the like. I look at our family sponsorship program that the Deputy mentioned that we've just rolled out officially this year. Essentially what that means is a family moving, say, from New Brunswick to Cold Lake, if that particular family has a child that might have a particular ailment, through the MFRCs, we're linking that family with perhaps a family in situ that might be helpful, might have a similar challenge, and can kind of connect and support that family as they transition. Additionally, we've got a strong focus on the fighter force in terms of force generation, i.e. The training that we provide to our pilots on a yearly basis. Through One Canadian Air Division headquarters in Winnipeg, we've put a premium on force generation being priority one. So what that means is any given day, as you look at the fighter force flying around this country, they're making maximum benefit of every single hour that they're flying. So we're doing perhaps a few less air shows, we're doing a few less CF-18 demos, but really focused on that knowledge transfer that has to happen in that cockpit or between the two pilots perhaps that are in that formation.
Thank you very much, General Messenger, for that. We'll now move to Ms. Alislev, please, for 7 minutes. Welcome to the committee.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you very much for a really important and critical report. I think you've highlighted quite clearly that we have to focus first and foremost on why we have an Air Force, why we have a fighter force, and that's to deliver fighter capability. In the 80s, we bought 138 aircraft, and that was to fulfill NORAD and NATO and Defence of Canada missions. And now we have 76, and we're talking about buying 18 additional ones that are older than even the ones that we own. We also have incredible knowledge and data about our maintenance capability. We're one of the best in the world in terms of our understanding of aircraft maintainability and reliability of the F-18. And we've seen from the Auditor General report and from our excellent data that the maintenance hours are rapidly increasing. And so we say, you've presented to us that we're going to be able to maintain that capability because we're going to divide those flying hours over these increased, significantly older aircraft. So the maintenance hours are going up rapidly, ensuring that the aircraft are not available, and yet we're going to deliver capability until the forecasted replacement in 2025. I'm wondering if you can tell us how exactly that will happen.
Thomas.
Thank you for the question. You point out that our aircraft are aging. There's absolutely no doubt, which is why our focus is keeping the Air Force operational until the Future Fighter Capability Project is complete. And it's a project where we've met every milestone. The RFP, the draft RFP is on the market. So we are now working towards Future Fighter capability. What our goal is in purchasing the additional fighters from Australia is to spread the number of hours out over more airframe, as you rightly point out. They do require more maintenance, there's absolutely no doubt, but we're also investing in their regulatory capability, and we're finishing the analysis for their combat capability.
So at this point, we don't have the evidence yet to show how the distribution over a greater number of airframes will allow us to achieve our NORAD and NATO operational commitments until the end of 2025, which is when we start to begin to get the new fighters, which we don't get until 2032, all of them, and yet the Auditor General's report clearly says that the estimated life expectancy, which was originally in 2002, which was extended to 2008, which was extended to 2012, which was extended to, we have extended the estimated life expectancy of the F-18 for almost 25 years, and this auditor report says that it won't make it past 2025, and yet we're going to take them to 2032. Why should the Canadian public have confidence in those numbers?
Well, I will ask the auditor to speak to what they've said. I don't think that they've said these planes cannot fly past 2020 or 2025.
That the Air Force said that there would only be, that beyond 2025 there were concerns about achieving capability.
Well, we'll certainly ask the Commander of the Air Force to speak to the safety and the capability of those planes. I assure you, the money being put into those airframes will keep them safe and operable. We would not otherwise put the money in. We certainly are not in the business of putting our pilots at risk. But I'll ask Admiral...
Fair enough, but if I could, it's money that we need to ensure we deliver on a capability. And so I think the real question here is, when we're looking at taxpayers' money, is this good money after bad? When we're looking at almost the equivalent of a horse and buggy in an era of cars, and yet we're saying that we're going to attract pilots and we're going to continue to operate horse and buggies and deliver on a car mission.
The goal of the interim fighter capability project and the investment that we're making not only in new aircraft, the Australian planes, but in our own fleet is to ensure they are operable and highly operable and functional until the Future Fighter program comes into effect. And the Future Fighter program is moving as quickly as is possible. And we've, as I said, we've met every milestone for it. Our focus is the Future Fighter.
Could I ask you about that? I mean, is it...
Through the chair.
Yes, of course. Chair, if we could look at, is it reasonable expectation that it will take us another 10, 15 years to procure aircraft? I know that other countries are able to procure replacement aircraft more quickly than that.
Well, General Meisinger and Pat Finn can speak to you about the current fleet, and certainly Pat can speak to you about the timeline for the project.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try to be brief. I wanted to get a portion of your question with respect to maintenance. Unquestionably, hand over heart, we've got the best maintenance personnel in the world, and I think I would make that point to any particular crowd. One of the most
we don't have enough, though.
Yeah. So one of the
when we're 22% short, and the maintenance hours are increasing exponentially because it is beyond, in many respects, its estimated life expectancy, we are asking something that may be more than we can actually achieve to maintain capability. And I think that's the question I'm looking for, General.
The maintenance renewal plan approved in 2017, I think, is going to be transformational in terms of our maintenance capacity within the fighter squadrons. Currently, that particular contract has yielded almost 50 seasoned contractors who largely are retired technicians that have dozens of years of experience. Those teams are now working in 3 and 4 wing.
So if they're retired technicians, General, why are they not still serving?
Some of them, I believe, have retired due to age, other due to perhaps medical arrangements.
And so then in that request, are we not looking and furthering the demographic problem so that we don't actually have the maintenance capability over the long term to get us to 2032?
No, I think this program, what we're seeing is about 2,200 hours of mentorship happening per month, per squadron. The feedback that I've had, certainly being in Romania quite recently, speaking to the technicians that are delivering on that NATO mission with our F-18s, the feedback was extremely positive. A lot of these individuals are able to discern the snag or the maintenance problem just by kind of quickly assessing the challenge, whereas it perhaps would have taken a little longer with the current technicians that we have. So I think we're going to see some improvements in that regard as a consequence of this very important maintenance renewal contract.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to Mr. Christofferson, please. First round, 7 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all for being here again. And once more around the mulberry bush, Deputy? I want to open my remarks by going in a little different direction than I normally do, to the extent that usually 95% of what we do deals with exactly what we deal with at every meeting, which is the administration of the policies that the government sets. The politics of the issue get dealt in the House of Commons, and we hold you, Deputy, and your staff accountable for the dollars that you've been given to implement the policies that the political folks have said will be the priority policies. But I've been around here a long time, and I was around before we had the legal basis for an accounting officer. We brought that in for a very good reason, and it was to separate the responsibilities between the minister and the deputy, because it can sometimes be a blurry line. And I'm prefacing with all this, Deputy, by asking you to be very clear, if you would, in your answers, at least to me, in terms of what your responsibilities were and what your decisions were and where that line is. In the past, it was expected if you wanted to be a deputy and stay a deputy, your first priority was to protect the minister. We now have legislation that says your first priority is to be accountable. And if your responsibility of accountability ends, and it's a political one at that point, then you have to leave that there and not be defending the politics of the day. And I'll be watching very closely on that, Deputy, and trust me, it's in your interest. But if we start sliding into just blind loyalty and defending, I'm going to be very upset, really. Because I have to say, Chair, that for the first time in this Parliament, not some others, but only for a total of maybe 3 or 4 times I can think of in 15 years, 5 Parliaments, where we need to go speaks to the politics of the issue and the politics of the policies that were given, as opposed to what and what didn't the department do. And I say that this way. I've looked at this thing. I read this very carefully. I was a defense critic for a number of years. I understand this a little bit. I don't pretend I'm any kind of expert. But it's pretty clear that no matter how many edicts from on high the government may make, if there's not enough pilots and technicians, we're not going to keep the planes in the air that we need to meet the commitment. And pretty much that's what this report is. And I want to point out, Chair, if with your indulgence, that the audit objective, you all know often I like to just start right at the beginning of what was this about. The objective of this audit was to determine whether National Defence managed risks related to Canada's fighter fleet to meet government commitments to the NORAD and NATO until operational replacement fleet is in place. The conclusion was, we concluded that National Defence has not done enough to manage risks related to Canada's firefighter fleet, aircraft fleet, so we can meet commitments. And also in 3.52, National Defence has not done enough, in part because of factors outside its control. I've got so much sympathy for that when I read this. And I get the politics. As I understand it, there was a shift from NORAD being the priority to making sure that a high alert at NORAD and all of our NATO commitments could be made. I get the politics of that, with the President of the United States going on and on about NATO and the responsibility of the minister to make sure that Canada is seen to be a team player. I get all of that. That's to be dealt with in the House of Commons. But to turn around then and to buy these planes and leave the impression that that's going to solve our problem and pretty much hang out the department to dry, as I see it, is not acceptable. There's a part of this in my second round where I'm going to hold the department to account on a bit of their estimates and some planning they did, where I have some questions. But overall, I have to say, Chair, that this is very serious. But I've been around. I know there's procurement problems. We've gone around that many times, Deputy, and I've gone that with other deputies too. That's not the issue here. I look at this and I'm saying to myself, the politicians of the day, and I was a provincial minister, so again, I do understand that relationship, made a proclamation that we will now be able to do this with NATO and we'll do this with NORAD, and we're going to buy these planes, and there you go, we solved our national defense problem. No, because of the reason I've outlined in this audit. We don't have enough technicians and there's not enough pilots. And if you don't answer those questions, it doesn't matter how many aircraft you got, we're still not going to be able to meet our commitment. So I look at this and I say, how much of this can I put at the feet of the deputy and the department? And I got to say, I've got a lot of sympathy for the fact that you were put in an impossible situation. You know, so to that degree, I don't really have a lot of questions for you. To me, a lot of this stuff is back in the House of Commons in terms of why is the minister announcing things that when we look at it aren't real, i.e. our ability to meet a NORAD high alert and all our commitments in NATO. The minister has left the impression that purchasing these planes is going to solve that, and the fact is it has not. So I scoured trying to find where I can hold you to account on this, Deputy. But, I mean, you folks are doing from what I can see, you're working really hard and going against headwinds. And I accept what you say, General. There is a problem out there. Now, would more money solve the problem? It usually would, so there may be some solutions. But, the department doesn't decide, Chair, how much money they get. The government, and then Parliament does. So, this is one of those times, colleagues, when I really feel that the actual crux of the issue is not so much that our senior bureaucrats and decision makers have let us down. That's often the case when we're here. It's our job, hold them to account. I got to tell you, in this case, I don't see it. And when I read the analyst version of things, I've read this, I've talked to our critic, and to me, when it boils down, it all boils down to the fact that we haven't had the replacements. The department's been jerked around by both parties who've been government in terms of saying we're going to buy all these planes, that's going to take care of everything, and then you get the rug pulled out from under you, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's an edict from on high about all this defense we're going to do in the air with all our planes because we're buying somebody else's used problems, which is a different issue, and we can talk about that. But anyway, I don't have a direct question on this. I do later. I'm coming around on the second round. I give you a warning, Deputy. But that's the way I see this, and I just give you an opportunity, Deputy. I'd like to hear your thoughts. If I'm wrong, maybe in the second round, the Deputy can give us on her thoughts on maybe I'm wrong and it is her fault and she wants to confess and say so. And I'll accept that, Chair. I'll accept that.
All right. Well, thank you. In the enjoyment of the moment, I gave you an extra minute already, so I can't give our deputy any time to answer, but I will give Mr. Furr some time, so welcome to our committee, sir.
Thank you, Chair, and nice to see everyone. I'm usually not sitting on the side, but it's nice to be here. I wanted to just pick up on something that was mentioned earlier, and just before I do that, mention that when I read that Auditor General report, I thought it was a good report. I thought that it stated the obvious. We have a capability gap. We've had it for years. It really started to manifest itself when previous governments decided to only modernize 79 airplanes. We lose an airplane every 2 years. We're at 76, and that's kind of where we're at. But the report did say that the jets that were being purchased would help manage the fleet. I accept that. I totally understand it. We'd all rather have new aircraft, but we are where we are, and that's the best way forward given where we're at. It did identify that the limiting factor, however, was pilots and maintainers, and I understand that you have to work on all three at the same time. So with regard to pilot retention, not recruitment, I've done some reading, and I appreciate your remarks at the beginning, but I have to say that and I have tabled M177 in the House, so I'm very, very aware of the numbers with regard to the global pilot shortage, the Canadian pilot shortage. And if I look at what our allies doing on the retention side, the U.S. Air Force, U.S. Marine Corps, U.S. Navy are offering up to 210,000 U.S. for up to 6 years of obligatory service, depending on how many years in you have and what aircraft you're flying. The Canadian forces in the mid-90s offered a bonus to pilots as well. So we have a precedent of doing it. Our allies are doing it. FedEx is offering between 40 and 110,000 to keep their operations flying. Delta is giving everybody a 30% pay raise. I understand that is a unique challenge when you have to do something like that, but I would suggest that if that's not already being considered in the other things that you haven't identified but said there are other things happening, that you seriously consider it, because this pilot shortage is not going to get any easier. It's going to get harder, and we need to stop the bleeding, and that's one way to do it, in addition to some of the other things that you mentioned, and we have a precedent for doing it in the past. Some of the other things on the generation side, and I had a longer conversation with the Chief of the Air Staff at a function recently, but I want to bring some of these up as a recommendation that you guys could look into if you're not already looking into. We have CFTS and NFTC, which are two contracts that are generating pilot production in Canada. To the best of my knowledge, we have retired military pilots working there, teaching in simulators and teaching ground school. There's no reason why those gentlemen or women couldn't fly in the airplane to just give us better force generation capability. They're there. I understand they do it in helicopters right now in Portage, and if we're not using them to their maximum capacity, that's going to hurt us. You could free up military people and post them to the OTU to crank up your OTU at the same time to generate better capacity there. I would also recommend that we ask our allies for help. In the mid-90s, we seconded, I believe, 4 F-18 fighter pilot instructors to Australia. If we haven't made a phone call to the U.S. Marine Corps or the Australian Air Force, I suggest that we might want to consider doing that. We've helped them. They're our pals. They'll help us out if we ask, I'm sure. And then finally, 419 Squadron, when we shift to fighter pilot production, like has been mentioned, is a subcomponent of just pilot production in general, which is a problem. 419, for the most part, I understand, generates much of its adversary training in-house. We have a contract with Discovery Air right now that generates pilot adversary training. You could shift a lot more. You might have to beef up the contracted hours, but having 419 generate its own red air training is just taking another CF aircraft and a CF pilot out there as a training aid for a student when we have resources that could do that. So either one or more of those things or a combination of all of them I think would help with, like overnight, with pilot production and help get this machine cranked up in addition to recruitment. I want to shift quickly to combat capability and maybe ask, I don't know if you can share this, but as we know, the F-18 hasn't had a lot of combat capability upgrades since about 2008. I think they got an air-to-ground capability upgrade in Libya with a new air-to-ground weapon, but we haven't had much. I was wondering if you could comment on what you're considering for that, because that's going to be an important part of keeping our aircraft relevant moving forward.
Mr. Fear, appreciate it. General Meinzinger.
Yeah, thank you for the comment. Certainly, if I could just reflect a lot of ideas there that you've presented. If I would start by one point, I attend NATO Air Chiefs Conference twice a year, and my first time at that table, I would tell you the lion's share of those NATO Air Chiefs are dealing with the same challenges we are. So we regularly consider option space ideas, and we try to share our thinking in that regard. So I've taken note of your comments. Certainly, I have reached out to my counterparts across the globe looking at opportunity space. There are other nations that are transitioning to other aircraft, meaning they may have some pilots that need to be employed to be seed corn, perhaps. So I've had those discussions as well. And we would be very open to one-way exchanges. I think at the core, the issue is about experience and how do we ensure that we can maintain a level of experience in the key cohort within the schoolhouse. I'd end on just to answer your question. So we have committed consequential to the OIG's report, and we certainly accept both of the recommendations, and we are embarking upon conducting a analysis of those combat capabilities that we might consider moving ahead. And I guess just to be general in this forum, that will include looking at sensors, weapons, self-protection capabilities, and also a bucket we call mission support capabilities. So that's the area we're going to explore in the context of that work we're going to complete by the spring of 19.
Thank you for that. Are there any considerations on when you get that bucket of things that you'll be looking at as to what would be ported onto the new airframe? Should we, when we get our new airframe, like if we had a new air-to-air missile, for example, we could move that over, but if we had some defensive EW kit that was inside the airplane, that might not. Is that going to play a role in what makes you, and how you will decide what you'll go with and what you won't? Yeah, I think ultimately that'll be one of the key factors, the portability, if you will, the transferability. I think we'll also look at the time and space, and we'll also look at perhaps the number of aircraft we would consider under that program.
You have 30 seconds.
I'll have to leave there. I don't have time.
Right,
I'll get a question and I get shut down.
We'll get it back to you, Chair. All right, thank you. Ms. Ellison.
Thank you very much. I'd like to talk a little bit more about the training as well. We've known since 1995 that we were going to have a shortage of technicians and of pilots. We've did studies, we forecasted how commercial aviation was going to take. The aerospace industry has known what the increase in pilot demand. So this is not a surprise. We've known it for very many years. And we also knew we had a demographic problem, and the problem with airlines has always been cyclical. So we've known that they steal from the Air Force, and we've had to plan around that. So we're in the same situation. Can you tell us why, when we've known, at least since '95, that we haven't done anything about it, and what confidence we should have in you now that we will do things differently to ensure that we have the technicians and pilots?
Yeah, so if I may, certainly this is absolutely important work, one of my top priorities. This is not going to be easy, as I put it in the context of the global challenge we face, but we will embark on this. My team is fully motivated. I had all of my general officers here in town.
So again, in 20 years, though.
Yep.
So today it's your top priority, and I'm excited, and I know that you're newly as Chief of the Air Staff, but we've got 20 years, and even before that, we've known. So what are we doing differently now, and why should we have confidence that we'll achieve the capability?
Yes, I think, as I indicated, sharing with you the kind of principal reasons that people choose to leave the Canadian Armed Forces, I think, is a great algorithm to look at how do we, make improvements within the Air Force.
Have those reasons changed?
We got to let him finish the answer first. Go ahead, General.
Okay. So again, Many initiatives that we've got, some in play. I talked about the reserve one. Let me talk about that for a bit. I think there's a tremendous opportunity for us to leverage our air reserve to a greater extent than we are today. We currently have 2,000 reservists in the RCF. I've set an aspirational goal of 2,550. We're putting in place 2 new occupations, one at the officer level, one at the NCM level. Let me explain that briefly. The officer level classification is going to be what we call air operations. These individuals will be principally working in the wing, the division headquarters, running sort of the staff and operational planning functions. Traditionally, we've had to pull our pilots into those staff jobs. So by standing up this particular capability, this new classification, we're going to see more pilots able to continue to fly at the squadron level. So there's but one example of the numerous that we're implementing.
And can you tell us if the trend is increasing or decreasing? We've got a 22% shortage. What was it 5 years ago, and what are you forecasting it'll be 5 years from now from a technician perspective and from a pilot perspective? We're not replacing the ones that we're losing, and we're already short. So can we see where that trend is going? Because I know we keep the military keeps meticulous stats on that.
Okay, Mr. Finn.
Mr. Finn, please.
Thank you. Maybe if I could just speak specifically to the maintainers. What we're doing, and you talked earlier on about the exponential rate of maintenance, it's not quite exponential we're seeing, and a lot of it's at the third line. So a lot of this is how we're now using industry. Specific to this fleet and this aircraft, we've already taken a big step. We've generated almost 200 first-line maintainers by actually looking at how we do industry, how we use it at the second line, like we do in the Navy and to some extent in the Army. So we're looking at it new fleets. We've looked at it across fleets, the C-17, how we maintain it, how we're doing the Cyclone, how we're bringing things in. So you're right that there are trends and there's a complexity around a maintainer and everything they need to do, a military maintainer. So it's causing us to look through something we've called the Sustainment Initiative, how we're sustaining all the fleets, what really needs to be uniform maintainers and what really can be a civilian experienced maintainer who actually are more efficient as far as time on aircraft is what we see. And that is really actually helping us on the maintainer side to kind of change the trend to actually be able to build the right first level deployable maintainers, as you would be aware, while we have the rest of the enterprise at the appropriate place, be it industry or otherwise.
And so we outsourced our training sovereignty by having training that was once delivered by military capability, now delivered by civilian capability, which constrains our ability to train rapidly. Wonder if you could speak to how we're going to address that. And then the likewise corresponding would be by outsourcing maintenance capabilities, will that also compromise our combat capability because we won't have those uniformed personnel to do that maintenance?
It's got to be very quickly because we're just right close on our time.
Thank you for the question. So we have always relied heavily on industry. A lot of the intellectual property in the work has always been there, certainly for our most complex platforms. So a lot of which now, of course, is done in Canada by places like L3 and IMP, which have always been critical, and critical right back to World War II and before in the context of the military supply chains and how we support our equipment. Thank you.
Mr. Finn, we'll now move to Ms. Yip, please. You have 5 minutes. We're in the second round, so it's a little quicker.
Thank you all for coming. With all these critical shortages of labor, will there be enough budget to first retain pilots and technicians, secondly, to upgrade training, and thirdly, to allot for the increase in the maintenance hours?
Thank you very much for the question. Budget is not an issue. Strong, Secure and Engage has fully budgeted for the number of pilots we need, the number of technicians, and the amount of money required to run the Royal Canadian Air Force. So that's not our issue at this time. It is getting the number of people in place, as the Auditor General has commented.
Okay. There's often financial barriers to becoming a pilot. Alberta has a pilot program which is only 18 months compared to 3 years in other provinces, and they also provide a $50,000 scholarship. And if the training costs $80,000, then they only have to pay $30,000. And I am just wondering if or how the Department of National Defense can help reduce financial barriers in the pilot programs?
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar. So this is a community college in Alberta, is this correct?
It's a flight school.
Okay, so is your question, just so I've got it, your question is could we...
Could we do something to help encourage students to want to become pilots?
Right.
Because at $80,000, that's a significant barrier, and that's just 1 year.
Yeah, so certainly we have lots of programs where we can have people join our team and track towards getting their wings. I think of the Seneca College program out of Toronto, where we take Canadians in a matter of 4 years. They're able to get their aviation degree and also do their pilot training. So they graduate with a degree, with their wings after 4 years, and they're headed to a squadron. So this is a program we're very keen on. In fact, we're finding the success rates of that cohort versus the direct entry cohort is a little bit better. They're having greater success in attaining their wings. So we're looking at perhaps increasing that subtly, and we're also looking at perhaps a French Francophone college where we could set up a similar type of approach.
In terms of the targeting cell, what is that about? It says something here about it's created to assist with attracting qualified applicants for pilots and for targeting recruitment efforts, and it was to be started this month. Can you tell me a bit about it and what's happening with that?
So essentially this will be a bespoke team within the Chief of Military Personnel that very much will be focused on not only targeting pilots, which of course is a priority for me, but all of the stressed occupations that we have. But in the context of the map that you're reading, it is specific to pilots. So it may mean how we engage in communities. It may mean engaging in some of the institutions that you've cited, where we can purposely make ourselves known and perhaps encourage individuals to come join our team. Additionally, you know, the way CMP is configured, it's very important that they have the ability to sort of fast track people into the institution. So in areas where we are stressed and we are lacking capacity, a focused effort, the targeting mechanism you described, is going to be net benefit to us.
Will there be more CF-18 pilots being recruited, and if not, why?
So we will continue to recruit broadly. Generally speaking, it's not difficult to attract individuals to want to become a pilot in the Canadian Armed Forces. It's really the selection to become a fighter pilot happens once they're in the training enterprise. So we select in training those that are going to stream off to 419 and 410 Squadron based on the skills and the competencies that they display during their flight training. So they're not actually recruited specifically to become fighter pilots. They're recruited to become pilots, and then through the context of their training, we determine, and certainly there's a matching of preference, but at the end of the day, that derives an outcome, and that's how our process works. So anything we can do to improve the success rates in that enterprise, and I would point to the aircrew selection tool that we use now in Trenton, Ontario. It is essentially the filter young Canadians that come in. They run through a battery of tests, and then we determine whether they've got the right skill sets and aptitudes to move on into the pilot training system. And we found, after introducing this new model, we collaborated with the RAF, that the success rates and the outcomes are higher than the traditional approach that we use. So we're quite excited about that, and that at the end of the day is going to mean more outcomes at the end of the production, and meaning more individuals that can go into the fighter force.
Very much, General. We'll now move to Mr. Kelly, please. Mr. Kelly, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Deputy Minister, in your opening remarks, you addressed a number of things, and we have the report which, you know, quite clearly gives us a sense of the extent to which the lack of pilots and the lack of maintainers are responsible for the shortcomings in operational capability. But I want to focus on several times in your statements you spoke about the next, the advanced fighter replacements arriving in 2025. 2025 is approaching very quickly, and we don't have really any clear indication of how and when. I mean, when is the if there's to be an open competition for the replacement aircraft, when will that commence, and how much confidence do we have that we will receive the first advanced fighter in 2025?
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question. I'm happy to answer that. And certainly Mr. Finn, as our Chief of Procurement, knows it in profound detail. We are on track with all the statements that we have made about the Future Fighter Capability Project. On October 26, we released the draft request for proposals to industry. 5 companies received the RFP for continuing with the competition. We are very confident that we're going to make the timeline. We will be issuing the final RFP in the spring. Part of the reason why we do a year of consultation with all the companies that are interested and have jets and planes that would be capable of competing is to ensure that we have a successful procurement at the end of the process. So we are well underway with the Future Fighter capability.
I think I can assure you there will be tremendous scrutiny around this procurement, given the litany of the disasters of procurement that have spanned governments. I mean, again, this is not to in particular single out the current government. Procurement is a tremendous problem that has spanned governments for many years in Canada, and this particular one, there will be a lot of attention given to it. But I'm going to ask now, Mr. Bertolet, did you contemplate in your audit the risks around failure to begin receiving advanced jets in 2025? I mean, we are on extension after extension after extension to the life of the current fleet. Everything in this plan and this response, to me, appears to hinge on ensuring that between 2025 and 2032, we fully replace the fleet. And I'm concerned, given the history around problems with procurement, of what is going to happen in that time window if we don't actually achieve the procurement and delivery of advanced fighters.
Mr. Chair, that was a question that we didn't look at during the course of this particular audit.
I really hope that we're not here around this table listening to a future Auditor General's report on the procurement of the advanced fighter. Perhaps then back to you, Deputy Minister Thomas, have you contemplated what are the risks of failing to deliver between 2025 and full delivery by 2032?
Well, thank you very much for the question. The risks are that we will not be able to meet our commitments and defend our sovereignty through the Royal Canadian Air Force, and so therefore every effort is being made to ensure that we meet the dates. The consultation with industry thus far on this process has been going very well. The statement of requirements and the RFP is out there with industry now. We'll get feedback with them over the next couple of months to see where they have questions about the RFP, and then we will go forward in the spring. That process will be tightly managed by Mr. Finn and his team to ensure that we meet the dates.
What do you mean when you say we'll go forward in 2015? If industry is in receipt of the RFP, sorry, of 2019, could you?
I'll ask Mr. Finn to respond, but they have the draft right now, and that's become our practice.
Okay, so this is in draft form. So what you say is in the spring
will be the final.
The final RFP will be
launched.
Will be launched. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yeah, thank you for the question, sir. So since pre-qualifying the 5, and again, one has declined to proceed, the 4 we have been working with them in a number of areas and have been going back and forth with various documents, areas we want to get their feedback on. We've brought that together. They have actually until before Christmas to give us their detailed feedback on any comments they have on it. We will then be looking through the winter to update it. We will put it out to them one more time to make sure if they have any final comments. And then the competitive RFP will be issued in the spring of 2019. In 2020, the bids come in, we will complete the evaluation, and we will down select to what we call a competitive dialogue process. We're very cognizant of the risks as you indicate them, sir, and that is why we've kind of built in some time to go through the competitive dialogue to actually land at the latest a contract award in 2022. So we have built in some time there because of the risks you indicate, and pretty much all of the suppliers have told us that from contract award for the first aircraft delivery is 3 years, and that is their kind of pretty consistent process, and it's what we've seen also in other projects, and that's what we're looking at. There could be some that could deliver some aircraft before that, but that is very consistent with the feedback we've received, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Finn. We now go to Mr. Area, please. Mr. Area,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Looking at the Auditor General's recommendation, I'll just quickly read it. National Defense should develop and implement recruitment and retention strategies. The second one, National Defense should analyze what upgrades are required for the CF-18 to be operationally relevant until 2032. I mean, at first glance, anybody reading it will think that the National Defense has not done anything so far. But only somewhere in the middle of the report, you actually says that National Defense has plans to address some risk. These investment decisions will not be enough. I think the key word there is enough. So when it comes to recommendations, at least in my view, in my opinion, that it should have been National Defense should develop additional strategies. Don't you think so?
Who do you want?
Auditor General.
Mr. Bertolet.
Mr. Chair, we stand by our recommendations.
Okay, then I'll ask the Deputy Minister. Ms. Thomas, it looks as though that you don't have any recruitment and retention strategies. However, I do read in your report that you do have some retention strategies. You do mention to Seamless Canada and the CAF retention strategies. Do you not?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Yes, we do have retention and recruitment strategies, but we have a particular problem with fighter jets, and so we have to do more. And more is being looked at by the Chief Military Personnel and the Commander of the Air Force.
Then why don't you clearly state that we do have and we need to do more? But first glance, it appears that you don't have any strategies.
We do, and certainly, thank you again. We have a renewed emphasis on growing the Canadian Armed Forces as a result of strong, secure, and engaged. We have been, up until recently, the Armed Forces have been downsizing. We're now having to reverse that trend and grow the Canadian Armed Forces at a time when unemployment is low and there is, as we've said, a worldwide requirement for pilots. And so we have a specific challenge. It is one that we're very focused on, and yes, there are strategies.
Okay. The government came out with the new operational requirement in 2016, and by 2017, you had estimated the cost to extend the life of CF-18s until 2032. It is about $1.2 billion. That number did not include the cost to improve the combat capability. When the audit was being done, were you involved in analyzing the requirements to improve the combat capability?
Thank you for the question. So when the audit was ongoing, we hadn't completed that analysis. And so the Auditor General doesn't report on something that isn't trained. They're reporting on what we've done and what we haven't done. We're never not analyzing the improvement to fleets. So they're constantly going through refits. They're constantly going through weapons changes and sensor changes and defensive capability and offensive capability changes in order to respond to threat and environment, et cetera. Certainly the Air Force can go into it in more detail than I, but that project isn't yet complete, but it will be this spring in order to then decide what we will do.
Mr. Chair, I would like to ask the Auditor General's office, as I said, if I look at the recommendation, it appears that the department is not doing, at least when the audit was being done, nothing to seek, to do analysis on what upgrades are required. Was that the case?
We got two Ms. Thomases here. I apologize from the Auditor General's office.
Thank you for your question. In terms of what we looked at was whether or not National Defence had carried out work that was approved and that we could then look at in the future whether or not it had been carried out. So in the case, as the Deputy Minister has said, they are carrying out work. However, analysis that is not final or analysis that hasn't been approved with a budget associated with it is not something that we would accept as being something that the Department has committed to and the Department has finalized as an action that it's going to take in the future, in this case to improve its combat capability.
My only concern is that when we read the report, it appears that the department is not doing anything, when actually, in my opinion, it is doing something about it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Arya. We'll now go to Mr. Christopherson, please.
Thanks, Chair. My questions are in the same vein as Mr. Arya, but I've reached a little different conclusion. When I look at page 8 of the report, 3.48, quote, in 2017, National Defence estimated the total cost of extending the flying life of the 76 CF-18s till 32 would be $1.2 billion. This amount includes the cost for spare parts and upgrades to the structure and avionics and electronic systems, but not any combat capability upgrades. 3.49. Without combat upgrades, the CF-18 will be less effective against adversaries in domestic and international operations. In our opinion, flying the CF-18 until 32 without a plan to upgrade combat capability will result in less important roles for the fighter force and will pose a risk to Canada's ability to contribute to NORAD and NATO operations, end quote. So when I read that, I looked at that and I thought, okay, well, one of two things. And one touches on where Mr. Arya went, and it looked like incompetency. And I'm addressing my question to the General because it was your people that did do this work. And so to leave out the fighting capabilities of fighter aircraft is hard to, from a layperson's point of view, understand. Sounds like incompetence. Now, if it's not, and if it's as Mr. Arya believes or thinks, that it was something that's underway but not maybe finalized, then my second thought is, then the $1.2 billion is a ruse, that's not the real number. So either you knew you had to do combat capabilities, but somebody forgot to put it in the analysis, or you knew that you were going to have to do it and there was a cost to it, but it was going to make the $1.2 billion look unacceptably high. I accept there could be a third reason. I anxiously await your response, General. Which is it? Incompetency, trying to dodge the numbers, or is it something I'm not seeing?
Yeah, I'll refer perhaps the numbers to my colleague here in a moment, but certainly as I indicated, our intent is to complete the assessment for combat upgrades to the CF-18 by May of next year, and as I've described, it'll be in a number of different areas.
That's not my question. Answer my question, sir.
So this is work that we're going to undertake, and as the Deputy...
my question. Chair, I asked.
Ask again.
I'm going to ask again. One of two things, or I'm missing something and there's a third answer. I accept that. But either there's incompetence, that somebody forgot to include combat capabilities in a fighter aircraft, or it was deliberately left out because it would make the $1.2 billion unpalatable. It's either one of those two or an answer that I don't understand, but please don't go off in some other direction, General. Please, sir, don't do that.
Okay, I'll defer to my colleague that can speak through to the $1.2 billion estimate.
I think, sir, my answer to your question would be the third. Okay. And it is across all of our fleets and how we do it. When do costs mature through our force development process? The $1.2 billion is an incremental number. It is additional funds we will need to keep the current aircraft maintained. Through Strong, Secure, Engage, we've developed a process in the force development that says, as we look at different capabilities, so it's not unique to this, as we look at our Victoria-class submarines or other fleets, it's the same process. We go through the option analysis that has been underway for years. Again, the RCAF, the Air Force, has been leading that. As they develop the what, our Chief Financial Officer and others then look at what is the cost of it, how does it fit against our envelope and our accrue envelope and what it is that we do. we can report all of the costs, the 1.2 elsewhere in the audit. They talk about the $3 billion incremental for the entire fleet. As we mature what it is we're doing, there will be some decision space. The General talked about radars or not radars. We will develop the costs. We will look at it from an affordability perspective, from a relative perspective. It'll go through our governance, and it will be reported and made public. So at this point, what it is we would upgrade is not landed. Therefore, we have not developed the full cost of it. Therefore, we cannot report it as of yet, but it would be part of our processor across all of our fleets.
All right, I'm trying to understand, but does that mean it's within the $3 billion?
No, sir, it is not within the $3 billion, which is...
Well, sorry then, let me, here, again, I'm just a layperson. You put down $1.2 billion as our cost. If there's going to be incremental costs based on some of the things you've mentioned, up to $3 billion, I ask you, does the $3 billion include combat readiness? And you say no. I am no further ahead. I still don't understand why it's not in the 1.2 or why it's not within the 3. And I'm not getting a straight answer.
Sir, because, thank you again for the question. Because what it is we're specifically going to do and concentrate our upgrades, because we are engaging allies in what's already underway. So, for example, the U.S. military, who are investing in some of their F-18s, they will continue to operate these, as will other key allies. So what will they upgrade and do? So because we actually haven't landed what the specific upgrades are, we have not actually fully costed them.
I'm sorry, not even a notional line item somewhere? I assume this is kind of expensive stuff. I assume it's high tech. Very expensive, and if you want to be accountable and open and transparent to Canadians and to Parliament, that is your ultimate boss, then shouldn't you include a number that you know is going to be big, but you just don't have the exact number?
And our time is up, and I'm going to give you more time, but I'm wondering if because this number is in the Auditor General's report, if you may also want to ask Ms. Thomas, you know, if why the combat readiness, because she references that it doesn't include combat readiness. Why wasn't that spelled out clear in their report?
Right out of my mouth, Chair.
Ms. Thomas.
So thank you for the question. In terms of answering why the 1.2 doesn't include combat capability, that was some of the questions that we asked during the course of our audit. And one of the answers that we were given was the fact that over the years and over time, National Defence has expected a replacement fleet to be in place. Therefore, as it carried out its work, it was looking at what it needed to do to extend the fleet to keep it flying, but it hadn't included combat capability in its estimates.
Okay, very quickly.
Sure. So the dollars that would have been in there were not in there in large part because they thought they didn't have to do the calculation for that distance of time because they were going to get replacement aircraft. Do I have that?
I think so.
I
want to make sure I understand your question properly and not put words into one another's mouths. So I think that over time, National Defence has expected a replacement fleet. Therefore, it has looked at what it needed to do, and over the course of time has not included combat capability.
Comment, just there you go. A lot of the answer, quite frankly, gentlemen, for the pressure I put you through, a lot of the answer, again, Chair, seems more political, or at least the politics of this horrible political file are putting our defense staff in a terrible situation. And that's the point I'm making on this one, is that normally that's not the case, but in this case, Chair, I really see the culprit at the end of the day, the politics and the horrible state of affairs in replacing our fighter jets. Thank you for your indulgence, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Christopherson. Mr. Fear.
Thank you, Chair. Just to circle back on the recruitment training aspect, is the two-tier system being considered at all? I know in the U.S. Pilots are up or out. You get promoted or you're out. In the British system, you can either be a career pilot or you could be a pilot officer. Is that one of the many things that you're considering at this time?
It's not a specific initiative, but certainly what we're looking at, you may recall the OCTB program. Very inclined to consider the enrollment of individuals, a small cohort perhaps, under the old OCTP, Officer to Cadet Training Program, now known as CEOTP program, individuals that come into our service without a degree. And the plan would be to allow those individuals to fly perhaps for 10 years, and then at that point consider them, do you want to get a degree or not? If you do wish to get a degree, we will look for a way to do that through perhaps RMC. If not, then certainly you would likely find your most senior rank being maybe a flying major. So we don't have a formal system, but we're looking at how we might remodel in some of the OCTP flow in terms of the intake into the RCF.
That's an excellent idea. Some of the best pilots I flew with in the military went through the OCTP program. With regard to the airplanes that we're looking at getting, I saw a couple numbers. We talked about 18. I saw for a brief time it was 18 and 7 for parts. I know parts are an issue as they draw down the production of parts. So is it 18 and 7 spares? Is it just 18? And in addition to that, is the $500 million include the purchase and the upgrades? And are those upgrades, to the best of my knowledge, are seat, upgrading the seat, NVG lighting, and then obviously probably some cosmetic work? But am I on the right track with regard to what needs to be done in the cost?
Thank you very much for the question. So the first one, it is 18 flyable aircraft. We have said up to 7 additional ones for spares. We will likely not go that far. The Royal Australian Air Force have been very forthcoming. In fact, provided us a broad number of aircraft to look at, as well as a large number of spares. So rather than bring aircraft to Canada and then disassemble them, we actually have gotten enough major assemblies for them that will likely only be a couple of additional aircraft is what we'll look at. But again, the additional ones would be as required for spare parts without, again, just burdening ourselves with it. The sum $470 million actually includes a number of things. As you indicate, it's the aircraft themselves, their upgrades. We want to do what we would call repair and overhaul of all the engines. We're going to go through our kind of checkpoint 3s for structure. We want to make sure that we're kind of covering all of that to make sure that it happens. The first aircraft will come in the late winter to spring. They will have flyable hours on them already. As you've indicated, some of the immediacy are for configuration management and training, the ANVIS lighting, as you've indicated, the injection seat. There's other aspects of the 470, so some things where we're situating ourselves for future fighters. So for example, we're looking at moving the test establishment from Cold Lake to actually have a federal government center of excellence here in Ottawa, and so that's included in it, as well as a number of the upgrades we're contemplating around, we've talked about it, interoperability and some of the other things. We've included those costs in it so that we can be very forthcoming and indicate, as a result of introducing these aircraft, here's the initial maintenance checks we will do, test and evaluation we will do, upgrades we will do, as well as some of the upgrades we envisage as a result of growing the fleet.
And could you maybe, I know you read in the press a lot of people that don't typically understand how, especially how fatigue on an airplane actually matters, probably one of the biggest driving points for how long this airplane is going to be able to fly. Could you comment on how Canada and Australia have been sharing data on these airframes, how we put so much time, money, and effort into making sure we understand where these airplanes are with regard to fatigue and why that's important? Because, I mean, obviously, the layman will go, this is going to be the leaky sub syndrome all over again, which is, I don't think, a great comparison, but I'd like to hear your comments on that.
Thank you, sir, for the question. So we have worked very closely with Australia through understanding the fatigue. Some of the experts are absolutely here in Canada. That's already been said. I was speaking to some of them late last week. The Centre of Excellence for F-18 fatigue in the world is here in Canada at Mirabel. The U.S. Navy actually send aircraft, some of their F-18s, for maintenance in Canada as a result of that expertise. We have tested aircraft to destruction to make sure we have a full understanding, full model, and we have a really, really good understanding of the fatigue life, and we cycle them through heavy maintenance at a rate at which what we see is less fatigue than we're expecting, which is a good thing. It's less cost, but it's also safer. The Australians, we know, operate their aircraft in a more corrosive environment where their bases are, salt air, other things, and therefore have a very, very strong maintenance program. We sent people down to do very detailed analysis, and they also gave us access to all of the data that's held here in Canada for all of their aircraft. So the detailed models for structure of all of their airplanes are actually held here in Canada, and we have been able to access all of that. There are slightly different configurations, but even within our fleet, some of our aircraft arrived at different what are called blocks, and therefore there are changes. But if there's ever a case, and you compare it to the submarines which I lived, kind of only 4 of them in the world, bring them to Canada, bring them into service, versus this fleet, which is quite ubiquitous, and as I've indicated, will be used in the 2030s by a lot of our allies. There is still a lot of demand on L3 by the U.S., the Spanish, by us, by others, and not just us, but by that entire community, that's saying how can we continue to operate them safely and effectively, and what upgrades can we do, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Fear. I just want to back up to Mr. Finn to a comment that you made there, and that was that you're going to start like a new center of excellence here in Ottawa?
Yes, sir. So this is around, unrelated in the context of not just fighters, but we have an aerospace engineering test establishment. It's in Cold Lake. It has been there for decades, but how it operates has changed quite significantly. So this is something we've had underway for some time.
So what are you doing? You're shutting down that in Cold Lake?
So we are moving it out of Cold Lake. But
so when was that decision made?
So it's still
And who made that decision?
So it is part of the kind of the process that we have kind of gone through. We just to be clear, sir. So we're not pulling everybody out of Cold Lake.
No, but you're pulling out a center of excellence out of Cold Lake. I mean, we've seen there's been a lot of things pulled out of Alberta in the last little while, and anytime anything is pulled out of Alberta, whether it's immigration centers or anything, let me tell you, Cold Lake is the center of our Air Force in Alberta. We recognize it. The community depends on it. When was that decision made?
So thank you, sir. So it's been over a number of years. Gradually it was made and presented to our minister. What has happened over time is that the work done in Cold Lake has become increasingly the administrative headquarters for this kind of effort, which is now done around the world. What we used to do is bring the aircraft to Cold Lake and have all the test and evaluations done there. Now we largely recertify the pilots. So for years and years and years now, we've had, for example, in the Cyclone helicopter, the test pilots and the test team are co-located with the suppliers. That is the modern way in which it is largely done. This kind of recognizes that. Transport Canada and others doing similar work. So this is a trend we've been on as far as our sustainment initiative. We've had this work underway for a number of years, and we've brought it incrementally forward to our minister, have communicated with local MPs, local MLAs to indicate our intent here.
Local MP where?
Up in Cold Lake.
We'll now go to Ms. Aleslev for a very short intervention.
Thank you very much. I'd like to continue on what Mr. Christopherson was talking about in terms of the $1.2 billion. I understand the way you explained it, Mr. Finn, is that that's to the increase in operational serviceability maintenance costs to maintain the fleet. But that's for the 76 aircraft. So have you included the additional Australian aircraft in that, firstly? Secondly, while you haven't, because the decision on upgrades hasn't been made, are you also saying that at no point has the Department of National Defence costed any of the possible or potential upgrades to the F-18?
Thank you very much for the questions. So on the first one, as I indicated, the $470 million we've approved for the additional Australian aircraft, in that includes the upgrades, the certain interoperability and other aspects that would be included in there. In the overall $3 billion, and that's where we go from the 1.2 to the 3, it includes bringing what will be 94 aircraft on an incremental cost perspective all the way to 2032. It's not all of them to 2032, but we have a glide path from 2026 on. So that focuses on the interoperability upgrades, the additional maintenance, the spares, all of those aspects of it. Over time, as we did Strong, Secure, Engage, and as we've seen repeatedly in the kind of the budgeting for major capital projects, things of that nature, we've learned over time that early costs, lack fidelity, we're not sure what they're doing, they could be made public, people ask about them, and then we find ourselves entrenched in this position where we've come up with a number with really incomplete information. So as with all departments, we now have a chief financial officer model. He is accountable for those numbers. He attests to those numbers. And so there are certain things we're doing in the incremental upgrades that we cost as they get ready to be approved and go forward. But in the broadest sense, without fully understanding what will be the path forward, will it include kind of radars, what it'll be, those things have not been
but again,
costed.
Radars have been costed, but you haven't supplied them. What other combat-capable upgrades that could potentially be deemed necessary has the Air Force and your department? I worked in aerospace equipment program management for many years. I know that you do scenarios. So what other scenarios have been costed for the F-18 combat-capable upgrades?
Again, thank you for the question. I think the process we used to do within the material group at that time scenario and developing our own costs, we've moved away from that model with the chief financial officer model who's responsible for it. Within Strong, Secure, Engage, there are some projects that are costed and listed in there, so short-range missiles, and there are some other specific things that have been looked at, have been prioritized, have been costed, and they actually are available in our public investment plan.
So could I ask you to please table the list of any Department of National Defense combat-capable upgrades to the CF-18 that have been costed, and then to also advise this committee if in fact the information has been provided to the government and to the Defense Committee or Finance Committee, because ultimately governments can only make informed decisions on what something will actually cost if they get that information from the experts.
Looks like you're wanting in on this as well.
So thank you very much for the question. As we've stated, we have a project underway. Until the Chief of Defence Staff's been briefed, and I've been briefed on both I've been briefed on the cost and the timelines and the expectations of the project, and the Chief of Defence Staff has been able to give military advice to the Minister. We won't be talking about these projects publicly. There is a process we have to go through internally before we're public with them. We have not yet briefed our Minister, and I think it is only responsible of us and fair that we brief him before we table things publicly.
Mr. Christofferson on a point of order.
We do not accept that we cannot have information at committee and at Parliament. It's in the Constitution. I've been through this many times. However, the exception is always security. And so what I would ask is, Chair, that you take whatever steps necessary, or this committee as a whole take the steps to find out what process would be acceptable for us to receive the answer. Because the question, I want to thank my colleague, and I thought she drilled down excellently and took what I was raising even further. But to hear somebody say, for whatever reason, understand the Constitution, for whatever reason, a parliamentary committee cannot be told you can't have information. Now, since we're dealing with security and defense, this could possibly and maybe likely be one of those exceptions. And in that case, we've put together procedures that both respect the security and the right of this committee. But a unilateral declaration by a deputy or anybody that a parliamentary committee cannot have information is unacceptable. There needs to be one more step to pursue this, so that that question, which is entirely legitimate in my opinion, can be answered in a way that respects the security and defense issues, but also upholds the right of Parliament to demand any information they so choose.
You're 100% correct, Mr. Christofferson, and we will hopefully be able to get the answer to that, or the reason around your hesitancy. Maybe it means that you're going to tell the minister fairly soon, and then we will get the information. But Mr. Christofferson, he's chaired this committee for a long time, and he's correct that in all the parameters around it, unless it is security. Ms. Alice-Lev, I think you still have, I ruled that it was a point of order. I accept it as a point of order, but that we will get something back in regards to it. Ms. Ellslev.
And again, just to be clear, Chair, we're looking for the research and the scenarios, not the project or the recommendation going to the minister. We're looking for the information so we have an idea of what the order of magnitude of what the possible scenarios might be, just so that we know whether we're looking at 10 billion or 20 billion on 40-year-old airplanes.
To Ms. Ellslev, and we will now go back to Mr. Fuhr.
Thank you very much. I wanted to just talk briefly about the procurement cycle that we're in right now and the timeline that we briefly touched on earlier. When I got to the Air Division in 2003, the highest priority acquisition for the military at the time was replacement to the Buffalo. And that was 2003, and we obviously have an answer for that in 2016. So I appreciate that not all the work was done properly on the first go when the previous government tried to sole source this. I was working in the Air Division, so I know what was done and what was not done. So we're not starting from scratch yet. There was a lot of work to do. So we're somewhere in between nothing being done and something being done, but it certainly wasn't all done. The defense critic has said a number of times that we could just do this in a year, yet the previous government couldn't do anything in a year. But I kind of have a hard time seeing that it's 2018. Anything that we get was mentioned earlier in this meeting that it would take 3 years delivery once we took a decision on something. That still gives us a number of years. And what is going to be the hole up here in getting this done? And it's certainly not the manufacturers. This is what they do. Like, they're ready to go. And I understand there's a process. I was in civilian life for a while, and I managed RFPs and RFIs and all that kind of stuff. But I still can't account for the timeline here, given the urgency of getting a new airplane for our military.
Please.
Thank you very much for the question, sir. Of course, bringing an aircraft into service is not just about the aircraft itself. And in the context of the Canadian context, particularly in the policies that we have and use effectively, such as our industrial and technological benefits, other things, there are some security aspects. There's a number of things that the governments and the suppliers need to contend with. And we're actually running a request for proposal which could result in a number of scenarios at the outcome. Depending on the successful bidder, we could have the direct commercial sales contract, we could have a foreign military sales application, we could have an acquisition under a memorandum of understanding. And in each case, we would expect the winning bidder, likely combined with their country, to be very forthcoming. In the draft RFP, we've said 100% offsets against the industrial technological benefits. There are security aspects to what they need to transfer to us. So I would say that at the context of an assembly line in the Plant 4, it may be kind of 3 years from the time we award you a contract. But my experience has been that negotiating those contracts and getting agreement just on things like intellectual property, it is an area of complexity in this day and age where original equipment manufacturers, they guard this like the crown jewels. We want to make sure that we have access to what we need for decades to come to upgrade and maintain these aircraft. And so as we look at our allies, and we may hear about very kind of rapid cycles, but when we talk to them about the work that happens beforehand, that happens after, that they may have a kind of a process that's not open to legal challenge quite as it is in Canada, that allows them to quickly select, but it could be multiple years before they sign a contract. So we are fairly aligned. We've talked about, and a few people have mentioned defense procurement here, whether it's schedule or budget. We know and have learned that we have been historically overly optimistic about things, and so we're very, very careful. There's a lot of risk at play here. We would rather be judicious about the schedule and timelines that we establish, and if they can be accelerated, all the better. But to say that we're going to pull off a miracle is just dangerous in what we achieve and where we land.
I totally appreciate that, and I appreciate there'll be time. But what we have now is we have a technology cycle that's shrinking and a procurement cycle that's growing, and that's a really bad place to be in. And to put things into perspective, these security concerns and 100% offset and 20 years of in-service and support have been there forever. The F-18 that we have now first flew in 1978, and we took first in test. We took delivery in 1982. From 82 to 89. So That's not a long time, and we're looking at some airplanes that have been flying for years. So I appreciate what you're saying. We've got 4 departments that have their fingers in the bubble here. We've got Treasury Board, D&D, PSPC, and ISET, and all of them have significant influence on this process. Yet none of them are ultimately accountable, and to me, that's a bit of a problem. A number of our allies do things differently. I know the Australians have a single point of accountability. The Brits have a single point of accountability. I would love to ask your opinion on that, but I'm pretty sure nobody at that table is going to give me their rendition of if they think that's a good idea or not. But certainly there's something that we can do better than we're doing now, because if we remain in this space where the technology cycle gets smaller and smaller and smaller and the procurement cycle gets larger and larger, we are not going to deliver what we need to our people in a timely fashion, and that's going to hurt us all.
7. Mr. Finn?
Just briefly, sir, thank you. One of the things that we're trying to do is actually, because that technology cycle is just not acquisition, that's in service and through life. You know, we've just closed off the project for C-130J, and we're already opening up for Block 8. So part of the complexity we're trying to tackle up front is actually how do we structure this so we can be inside the technological cycle, as you're indicating. So what are the partnerships, the reprogramming labs, the things we need to establish so as we get the aircraft, we're actually in the cycle of upgrade, which is far different, whether it's technology or intellectual property, than what we saw when we acquired the CF-18s or I saw in the Halifax class or otherwise. Today, that software cycle development is completely different, and we actually have to take the time to get it right so that we can live inside the cycle through life. Thank you, sir.
Okay, you're good. Mr. Kelly.
I want to follow up actually with some of the answers that I heard to Mr. Fear's question. The timing here, I believe, Mr. Finn, it was you who said that the assembly timeline is expected to be 3 years. You're expecting, if I remember your answer to my earlier question in the earlier round, was that you expect to sign a contract in 2022. So you have no time for anything to go wrong from the time a contract is signed within that. Is that,
again, from what we've heard from everybody is 3 years is a reasonable time to do it. They're active assembly lines, but you are correct. We're banking on that 3-year cycle. These are all people who have other customers, so they're actively building, and it's not because we sign a contract that we kind of jump the queue, but they're all telling us quite comfortably, as we've seen with our fixed-wing search and rescue aircraft and other aircraft recently, that 3 years in an active assembly line with an existing design is an appropriate risk mitigated schedule.
So of course everything would have to go right to even be able to sign that contract in 2022. You have your final commercial RFP scheduled for the spring. From there, walk me through again, maybe if you've got time now for a little more detail, what you expect to happen between spring of 19 and the expectation of signing a contract in 2022.
Again, thank you for the question. So spring of 2019, the commercial, or in this case it's a government, but nevertheless the formal request for proposal goes out. In 2020, we received the proposals early on. We go through the bid evaluation process, which will be a major chunk of 2020. We will down select to a couple of bidders for what we call competitive dialogue. The nature of this contract that happens adds some complexity to this particular request for proposal. And then with the idea of through 2021, we're completing the negotiations, getting the approvals to award the contract in 2022. We have tried to kind of be very judicious and not have an overly a risk-adjusted or a too risky a schedule to try to achieve some of that. But from the bids until the signing of the contract is where we've given ourselves 2 years for the competitive dialogue, the final negotiations, the various approvals we need to get, and signing the contract in 2022 with the idea of first delivery in 2025. We've shared this with all the potential bidders, and they're comfortable with that approach, sir.
Well, that really doesn't leave any margins that I can see anywhere other than perhaps the time interval from receiving, depending on, I guess, the timing of when you receive bids and following up and working with the bidders to finalize details for a contract. Unless you make up some time in there, you've got no extra time. You've just said that it's 3 years, that assembly is expected to take 3 years. If we're late on this, we don't have the ability to defend and to meet our defense obligations with our allies or our own sovereignty. I guess all I can say is from here on, everything needs to go like clockwork on schedule. We just don't have time in this for the kinds of delays and the kinds of failures of procurement that we have seen in other programs. I shudder to think of what many Canadians listening to this hearing might think about what has the potential to go wrong to get to 2025h. I'm going to leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr.
I'm sorry.
Ms. Alislev, you have some time. And just before Ms. Alislev comes in on this, we try at the table here to keep track of questions and then get the answer. And she did pose a question earlier, and it was in regards to the 22% of technician positions in CF-18 squadrons were vacant. And I think her question earlier was, because you keep these records, what was it 3 years ago? What do you expect it to be in 2 or 3 years down the road? You've gone from 22. Do you hope that next year it would be down to 18? And we didn't get an answer to that one. So if we could have the answer on that, please.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have the historic data in front of me, so we could certainly provide that to you. Looking forward, so some of the things we've done to sort of optimize the production of technicians within the Canadian Armed Forces. Specific to the fighter force, I would draw your attention to the maintenance initiative. We have 49 trainers now through the maintenance contract I cited earlier. These individuals are helping to deliver curriculum in 10 FTTF, which is the schoolhouse for our fighter force technicians. And what we're seeing is that we're able to produce more technicians now through that training mill. Further, if you go back into the enterprise, into the school in Borden, we were able to outsource some of our ACS, our structures technician training, to École Nationale d'Aéronautique in Saint-Hubert. And we've been able to run courses of 12 3 times a year. So consequently, we had a significant backlog of technicians 2 years ago. So through a couple initiatives, we've been able to push more of these technicians through the training mill, which means we'll have more on the flight line. At the end of the day, though, we still need to ensure that they get trained and they get experienced. And as the Auditor General pointed out in the report, a portion of the technicians that we currently have in 3 and 4 Wing are obviously not experienced. They're going to have to get that in the years ahead.
If I could, I want Mr. Massé to get in first, and then we'll come back to you. I think my question kind of took away from you. So, Mr. Massé.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to ask a very general question. I'm not a specialist in the defense sector, even though I wanted to be a pilot many years ago, perhaps even decades ago. So I have very limited experience in aviation. I piloted a plane for some time in 1952. But in recent weeks, I conducted consultations in my riding about the labor shortage, notably in Quebec and in Canada. It's affecting our entrepreneurs, our companies greatly. So I'd like to understand, is there are specific challenges that you are facing in terms of repairing and maintaining these fighter planes, which means that there's a lack of technicians and pilots that is greater for fighter planes?
Or Ms. Thomas.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur, pour la question.
Thank you very much, sir, for your question. Sorry. I'll start off at 50,000 feet, like you said, very generally. But a fighter plane is very complex, as you must know. The role of the plane, its capability, its systems, its weapons, everything that's included in a fighter plane. I'm sorry, I'm going to specify my question a little bit so that everyone can understand that everything is very complex. But what I should have specified, in terms of other types of jobs within the armed forces, you have other types of equipment that is very sophisticated, perhaps even more sophisticated than that of the CF-18s because they're a few years old. Is there something that is more specific? Thank you once again for your question. I'll start to answer, then my colleague can follow up with that. In terms of maintenance of our equipment, and there are different grades of equipment. We have engineers in charge, technicians, those of do maintenance and more advanced care. It's a very complex role that they play, whether it's a fighter plane, a submarine, a combat boat. It's very complex. When we recruit people, we do a competition. There is competition with the private sector. And there's also academic demand. It takes years to train someone, and therefore it's really hard to enroll someone. There are some jobs that we can train quickly. Sometimes we can train them in a few months, but for technicians, it can take several years before they can really work for themselves. Is this more rare, or is it kind of the case for all of these specialized jobs? In terms of our technicians and maintenance, it's the same case also for the Navy as well. Also for the armed forces, they have similar issues because there is demand from the industry as well. We try to recruit people so that they can work independently, and sometimes this causes problems. Are there any factors that were not mentioned that dissuade pilots, fighter pilots, or very specialized pilots from continuing in the Canadian Armed Forces in terms of piloting CF-18s and our fighter pilots? We talked about bonuses and other types of mechanisms to try and maintain these pilots in the Canadian Armed Forces, but there are any other factors? Are there any? For the average Canadian, piloting a CF-18 could be the ultimate position. I know we have older planes, but are there any other factors that could dissuade pilots from staying with you and improving their skills?
I think, what we find as we interview those that choose to leave is often at the decision point for that particular individual, it's often a family issue. We often say in the Air Force, we recruit the individual, but we must retain the family. And we find that unless there's a degree of predictability, unless there is positive career management over that individual, often we find individuals that are vexed. They come up to a point where they may not have anticipated they were going to move, or we're asking them to move their family to a location where perhaps their spouse cannot find employment. So what I have been saying is we need to treat individuals individually at the margin to ensure that individuals have clear understanding of expectation and what's coming in a couple of years. And on our part, I think we need to be more clear in terms of expectations. So telling a pilot that you're going to fly for 8 years as opposed to 6 years, and them not knowing if they're going to be posted to a staff job. We find a lot of individuals often don't wish to move to a headquarters and work in an office versus work in an aircraft. And we recognize that and respect that. But I think that dialogue that must happen at the margin before we force an individual to have to move, I think is very, very important. So we're working on that. We're trying to put in measures that will increase the communication and increase the expectation and the understanding with our individuals and their families.
Merci. Et il me reste encore un peu de temps, Monsieur le Président, si vous permettez. S'il me reste encore du temps.
Thank you. If I have some time left, Chair, I will give the rest of my time to Mr. Fuhrer.
You had 30 seconds left, so.
Thank you very much. I'd like to continue with the training aspect that was brought up earlier around the trend in the past. And you have, I note, a fighter capability maintenance renewal, and I'm assuming that that is going to achieve a plan to show how you're going to achieve the necessary technicians by a certain date. So obviously looking forward to seeing that document as well. So if you can provide us with the data of the trend up until this point, and then say from the mid-90s until now, and tell us whether it's moving in the right direction or not. And I wonder if that plan also includes cost.
So absolutely, we can provide that to you. I would make perhaps one point that I haven't had a chance to make in the context of technicians. So we have in our defense policy a growth of 200 positions to support the transition to the advanced fighter. And within that 200, approximately 108-ish are going to be apportioned to grow our technician capacity. Now, those are positions. We obviously need human beings. We need to train additional technicians to fill those positions. But it gives you a sense for the growth that we anticipate in the bench as we move to the advanced fighter. So that will be, those numbers will be phased in to support the introduction of the advanced fighter.
So by 2026, we're looking at an increase in technician positions.
That's correct.
By 200. And so therefore, I'm assuming that the maintenance renewal plan shows how we're going to achieve filling those positions by then, and that the cost is already embedded in the Department of National Defense forecast budget up to 2020. However long we've got?
Yeah, I'm sorry, just because of those 200, there's just a little over 100 of those additional 200 positions will be on the technician side. Some will be other support trades and the like, so it's not
for fighters alone? Yeah.
Yes, indeed. So, with the fighter renewal initiative, what will happen is with the contracting of second line maintenance, we are going to be moving approximately 200 serving members forward into first line. So you're going to see a significant increase in technicians on the flight line fixing aircraft, and we believe that's going to lead to more mission-ready aircraft for our pilots to fly.
Well, that's very interesting, but I would love to get to that in a second. So do we have a corresponding plan for pilots? So I don't see in this report, I see a study, an air ops study. I do not see an air pilot plan that shows us how we're going to achieve addressing the shortage of pilots. Have I missed it?
I don't think you'd find that detail in the OAG report, but specifically...
in the response.
Oh, I'm sorry, in the map. Okay.
In the key interim milestones, description, and dates.
Okay. So I can tell you my plan for 410 Squadron, which is the training unit for fighter pilots. So over the next 2 years, we're going to be running serial courses for flight training and the fighter weapons instructor course. And it's really important that we continue to run the fighter weapons instructor course. You may know that that is the incubator for creating the tactical specialists, those that know how to plan complex missions, how to weaponeer, and we need those individuals on our squadrons. Right now, the challenge...
Absolutely, yep. But that's the training piece.
That's right.
And so what we're really trying to achieve is the actual number of pilots. So it's a combination of retention and training, yes. And I'm wondering where the plan is that shows how by 2026 we will have all the pilots that we need and what that trend looks like, and of course what that trend has been up to this point, because it says 64% shortage. So we need to know now a plan, and do you have that?
Yeah, so my assessment is it's going to take us approximately 5 to 7 years to grow the crew force. And again, a lot of the considerations are in the future, right? We've got to stave off the attrition that we're experiencing today. So we're getting at that as a priority in terms of some of the retention ideas we have. We're going to maximize the throughput at 410 Squadron, but we recognize that we can't pull all of the experienced pilots from the 4 line squadrons to teach on 410 Squadron, because we need them on the line squadrons to train the new pilots that are on the line squadron. So it's a pretty delicate balance, I would tell you, but we're optimizing that based on the current crew force.
And have we included the increased cost of training, particularly the outsourced elements of training for fighters specifically in that $3 billion?
The $3 billion doesn't speak to, so there's no outsourcing costs that I could think of that would relate to the current plan for...
Fighter training is outsourced, a significant portion of it.
Pardon me?
So...
Okay. Yeah, the O&M costs that are attributed to force generation, I manage that on a yearly basis, so that's reflected in the monies that I get allocated to me as the commander.
And so we have enough money and we're fine for money to be able to achieve all of the training that we need to achieve the pilots.
Yeah, each year I have to make a case for the yearly flying rate for all of the fleets, and we've had support to fund that full YFR demand, and that's a number, that will continue to grow as we introduce more fleets.
Thanks.
Alice Lev. We'll now go to Mr. Fear. It'll be the last question of the meeting today. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank the Auditor General's Office for putting some heat and light on this issue. Many of us knew that this was coming and it was here. It totally specifically speaks to a capability gap, yet adds in the other elements that are required to generate combat capability. Pilots, technicians, and aircraft, all of them are equally important. We need them all to make things happen. And I want to kind of circle back on what I suggested before, because this is going to require, I think, the military to think outside the box in solving this problem and to do things that it may have not been willing to do in the past. We need to lean on our service providers more than ever. So KF Aerospace, CAE, and DA, they're there. Most of those guys we knew. We used to fly with those guys. They're all retired, and we know they're capable. We know we have existing contracts. We need to put those people in the best position to help us as soon as possible. Financial retention, I know you've mentioned that you're kind of mulling that around. It has to be done, and it's got to go to Treasury Board. That is not a slow process, so I would suggest that we just come to terms with that soon and get on with it, because our allies are doing it, and if we don't, we're going to be hurting. I know, General, you mentioned you talk to your counterparts with our allies often about asking them for help. I think we need to circle back on that, because I don't recall back in the 90s that we were in much better shape. We were hurting as well, but we responded to an urgent help ask from our allies, and I think that we should maybe circle back and ask them if they can help us out. The Marine Corps in Australia being probably the best suited to do that. And engaging with industry maybe in a way that we haven't before. Those technicians, I mean, the current airplane that we're flying right now, Boeing, has a capacity. We just ultimately need to write a check, get them to help us train more technicians faster. What we do isn't exactly the same. I appreciate that. I was in the squadron. I understand how that works. They can get our squadron techs to the 75% solution, and then we can take over from there. But if we do all those things, we'll be able to ramp up our capacity to generate pilots and technicians a lot faster. And I appreciate, simultaneously, we need more airframes at the end of the day. So when both those phones ring, we can be responsible partners and generate the combat capability that we said that we would. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Fear. Now Mr. Christofferson has come back and has asked for a very short summary or a very short question.
No, actually,
you have it, sir.
It's a point of privilege, and thank you for the floor. I notice we have about 5 minutes. I'd like to take just 60 seconds of it, if I could. This has been a pretty intense hearing. I thought maybe I would just like to put a small little bit of humor into where we are. Believe it or not. So see if I achieve it. So it's under the category of one of the greatest put-downs that was ever thrown back to me from across the floor from a colleague. So I'm on one of my big rants, Chair, and you've been around long enough with me and you know what they're like. One of them we saw today, and I was going on, and my theme of it all was 30,000 feet. I kept saying, if we look at this from 30,000 feet, and then I would go and do my attack, and further, never mind all these details, we look at this from 30,000 feet, and I went on and on and on like this about 30,000 feet, as loud as I could, as I am, and the room was dead quiet, and Laurie Hahn, former MP, Conservative, served here. He asked for the floor. And he said, and this is in reference to one of the General, Mr. Finn, answered a question about 50,000 feet. And Mr. Hahn took the floor. Who was it, Mr. Ferrer? Okay, good. Somebody made a reference to 50,000 feet, which triggered me. So after I'd finished doing this whole rant wrapped around what you really see from 30,000 feet in terms of what's going on, Laurie Hahn takes the floor, dead quiet. He says, I'm a former fighter pilot. You know what you see at 30,000 feet? Nothing. just like the value of the arguments we just heard. It was one of the best put-downs I ever heard, and I tell that story whenever I can. If you're out there, Laurie, I hope you're enjoying your retirement. Thank you, Chair.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Christopherson. We're very aware of your rants here. I just wasn't aware that you were also a stand-up comedian, but thank you for bringing a little bit of levity to our day here. And I want to thank our Auditor General's office as well as our Department of Defense for being here today. You know, we rely on you. We rely on our Air Force, all our men and women who serve in our military. We're very thankful for in our country. We want to see that it remains strong, and we want to see that the questions that we have are being answered, and that we can have confidence that you know, the concerns brought forward in the Auditor General's report, which are now concerns of Canadians, are being answered by our department. So there's been a number of questions that have been posed today. My clerk brought up just the constitutional ability that our committee has, and so we do expect those answers, and there can be ways that if they are, even if some of them are deemed security issues, that it can be in camera if it's that, and it doesn't sound like it was that, but if that is part of it, there's still ways that we can have some of these questions answered. So thank you for being here. I think today has been we've had people on all sides that have been involved in our military and have made it, I think, an excellent meeting. And so I thank you for being here and helping aid the committee in that. So we appreciate it, and we now stand adjourned. Oh, but before you go, I've just been told that our meeting on Wednesday, and I have mentioned this to you earlier, dealing with sexual harassment or sexual problems within the military, that meeting will be canceled because we're expecting a couple hours of voting, and that's possible, but we'll just cancel that. You can expect to come back after Christmas sometime, and we thank you for your willingness to do that. So we now stand adjourned.